So we're not that good at design, it turns out. It's like, hey, here's a program. Yeah, when do you want me to turn my air conditioner off? Oh, on the hottest days of the year? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I want to participate. So how do we get people to be part of this amazing grid that we heard about today and use their EVs and connect? We have to do things that they actually want, not things that we make them do and we have to bribe them to do so. So the problem is we're not that smart. It took us 80 years to put those wheels and the luggage together, right? That's really stupid. And it was probably because, we're pretty good at adapting as humans, and we do workarounds to get people to do stuff, or we make this little wheelies, and it was probably some little kid with a skateboard told his dad, put it on the skateboard, and Samsonite went, aha, I finally get it. So how does that work? So part of the problem is we get into our own habits. We get personal habits, and businesses also have habits. And we don't even know how we drive home. We know we do it, and we don't know how we get there. And so that kind of hurts us, but it's a biological thing, and we have to live with it. So how do we overcome that is by thinking like a 4-year-old again and ask why over and over. Who are my 4-year-olds? Oh, not in here. You have 4-year-olds. Who's that guy in the jacket? Way to go. All right. So how do you do this? You do it through this thing called design thinking. So David Kelly out of Stanford kind of started this company called IDEO, and they've invented all kinds of things all the way through social change. And they do this with the basis of empathy, not something we hear a lot about in our industry, but how do we immerse ourselves in other people's lives so we actually understand what they're going through? It's difficult, it's time-consuming. So when the old designers said, how do we make a toothbrush for a kid? Well, let's make it tiny. Turns out they all grab it like this, so they need a big, fat handle. So something like that. Now, at the Mayo Clinic, one of the premier places to get healthcare, they said, we're not doing our patients any favor. We're not getting the satisfaction that we want. So they hired IDEO to come in, and what the first thing they did was they essentially pretended they were a patient, went through the process, and what did they discover? This maze of activity. They're the ones, the patient doesn't know where to go. They made bigger signs. That didn't help. They're already not in their own clothes. They're sick. They're going from place to place being asked the same questions over and over. They said, we have to completely break this cycle and make the patient the center of the universe, both physically at the offices, but also organizationally. It made all the difference in the world. So that's a big change at the Mayo Clinic. Now, with how do we find these new ideas? Not by looking at normal customers. You look at the outliers, the person who is on his 3rd or 4th generation of solar panels, for example. That's where you find it. Now, Bank of America did this program where they looked at kind of the outliers. They found this woman, and they said, we need people to save better. And they looked at her. She always put in whole numbers in her checkbook. They said, why are you doing that? Oh, I round up. Why? It's because at the end of the month, I get a surprise. I think I spent more than I did. This became the Keep the Change program that many of you may know about, where the debit card use rounds up automatically. Very, very successful from that one idea that came from it. Anybody heard of these phrases? Right? These are what we call why we can't phrases, and not the good kind like United Airlines should have had. All right? These are the ones that get you in trouble. In design thinking, we do how might we statements. These are the statements that make the world open to you and go back to that 4-year-old view of the world. So the point of view is where you come from and ideate off of. So this is kind of the process of design thinking. And the big difference between this and normal is the left side. We spend way, way more time on the inspiration phase to get that point of view of the customer. So that's the other important part of this is we need cross-functionality on their teams. So your working group needs to have engineering and ethnography and marketing because the cross-pollination is so important. So ultimately what we have to do is design for the user experience and not design the way we want to. I asked the utility audience, what would you do to fix this? And they said, put up a fence. And then someone else said, no, put up an electric fence. Thank you much.